The NFL first round has come and gone, and Luther Burden is still on the board. The important question, who do we blame? Let's talk about it on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. And a former Jayhawk basketball player has evidently been in contact with Missouri. Would you take him? Simply because he's a Jayhawk. Would you take him, or would you say, get on out of here? Well, this is a topic that I'm sure is going to be quite polarizing. But you know what? Let me start here by reminding you today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. And if you bet on Armand Membu last night going 7th overall to the Jets, well, you definitely cashed in. I think that's where a lot of people, that was kind of the consensus heading in, was that he was going to be the top 10 coming off the board 7th to New York, and that matches Missouri's highest draft pick since Aldon Smith in 2011 when he also went 7th to San Francisco that season. But since Luther Burden is still on the board here, I think maybe that's the most interesting topic of all. By the way, Shedeur Sanders is still on the board as well. I would have been wrong on both of those a couple weeks ago. I just didn't think that, well, considering only a couple quarterbacks win in the first round there, right? Just Jackson Dart and Cam Ward. Correct me if I'm wrong here. I guess I should pull up the draft board here. But I just would have assumed with a lot of quarterback needy teams that somebody would have traded up into the first round to get Sanders, and kind of same thing with Luther Burden as well. A bunch of teams need depth at receiver, regardless if you think Burden is a potential superstar or not. I think he's certainly a guy that is a next level NFL player at the very, very least. And by the way, speaking of Shedeur Sanders and Luther Burden, well, I'd say Todd McShay won his battle with Mel Kiper this offseason, huh? In fact, probably by a second-round stoppage by the refs. I mean, McShay was on the Shedeur Sanders is ranked too high thing for a long time. Mel Kiper kind of fell on his sword there, but you know what? I just thought that was kind of an interesting thing there. I'll just be noting that I'll be following Todd McShay rather closely in the coming years, even maybe more so than I did in the past. But I did notice at least one Mizzou fan that I talked to quite a bit basically said that, well, you know, it's too bad that Brady Cook ended up costing Luther Burden a bunch of money yesterday. I have to say I was taken aback by this. This person is pretty negative on Brady Cook generally, but I will just say I have to stop myself, as I often do. You can't just have emotional reactions. Is there actually some merit to that point here? I'm going to say mostly no, because regardless of how you feel about how Brady Cook played last year, all of us know that, well, Brady had some injury problems there that hampered him a bit for sure. But regardless of how you feel Brady Cook played last season, I would ask this person, how did you like the Arizona offense this year after Jed Fish left that team in 2023? 2024, well, it went a lot worse for the Wildcats. I believe they were 4-8, and Tetriota McMillan was not nearly as productive as he was under the previous regime. Well, he ends up going in the first round anyway. Whether that's a good pick or not, we shall see. Whether he's better than Luther Burden or not, well, that's a subjective opinion that is certainly in the eye of the beholder, and we'll really only know who's right or wrong over time, over the next few seasons here. But my point here is that despite Arizona's offense kind of and the team in general falling off a cliff last year, in my opinion, if you can't evaluate receivers who have below average quarterback play, well, then you're not a very good scout, in my opinion. So I have a hard time believing that people turned on the 2024 film of Brady Cook and thought, this guy's not a first-round talent. Obviously, his numbers went down. His fantasy stats went down, his receiving yardage, his touchdowns. But I'm just telling you, look at the plays when he gets the ball in his hands. Look at the plays when Brady Cook does throw an absolute dime on 4th down against South Carolina. Who makes the clutch one-handed catch? Yes, it's Luther Burden, and you see these types of plays time and time again. So as I've said over and over again, I'm a huge believer in Luther Burden's talent, but if I'm going to acknowledge Todd McShay was right on the Shedeur Sanders argument, well, I have to acknowledge that he was right, at least in the perception of Luther Burden III too, because to me it's pretty obvious after yesterday, I was a little bit dismissive early in this process of what McShay said. Not necessarily dismissive, but just dismissive of the truth of what he was passing on. I was thinking, some of these GMs, these scouts, his sources could very well just be lying to him because they we'd like to push Luther Burden back maybe into the first round of the draft. Well, actions speak louder than words, and I think now with Burden, who is clearly a first-round talent in my opinion, whatever those character concerns are, as it were, clearly they seem legitimate in at least some teams' minds, enough teams' minds that this pushed Luther Burden past the first round into the second round. Now, I believe Burden could go as soon as the first pick of the second round. The Titans, with their new quarterback, Cam Ward, let's get him some new weapons, a new shiny toy to play with in Luther Burden. That would make a lot of sense to me. But quite honestly, I could see Burden, again, based on need, based on a team's own personal evaluations of his character issues, whatever they may or may not be. I just think that there's a real wide range of outcomes here for Burden still at this point. I would assume he'd go in the first 10 or 15 picks because if he doesn't, now he's starting to get into really ridiculous value territory because remember, Dorial Green Beckham even went in the second round. And Luther Burden has been a far more productive player in college than Dorial Green Beckham. Now, Beckham was an incredibly rare physical talent. The size that he had and speed combination is just not something that comes around at the receiver position very often. So on some level, I understand why a team took a chance on him. And yet, if you want to talk about character concerns, well, again, as far as what I know, as far as what the public knows about Luther Burden and Dorial Green Beckham, well, I hate to say it, DGB had a heck of a lot more concerning character issues than me. And I'm bringing that up not to pick those nits again or rehash a lot of details that I can't remember from 10 years ago, quite frankly. But just to point out the value here, and I think in the second round here, I mean, unless there's, FBI evidence about Luther Burden being behind, being the mastermind behind something. I'm being sarcastic here, people, for a reason. I'm just saying, okay, so he's not a perfect human being. How many of us were at 21 years old? I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, especially at this point in the process in the second round. Let's not get crazy here. And to be like, well, that darn Brady Cook, to me, if you can't look past maybe some below average quarterback play at time, wasn't just Cook, of course. Drew Pine started a game for Missouri as well. Again, I just don't think you're a very good scout. And if anything, if we're going to lay blame on anybody for Burden's lack of production, I think there's plenty to go around to the coaching staff as well. At a certain point, let Burden run a route that isn't just a something near the line of scrimmage, a flat type of bubble screen or something, or a 9 route or a route vertical downfield. Allow him to actually run something in the intermediate part of the field. That would be my criticism of Missouri's usage of Luther Burden last season. And actually, another reason why I think there's more there with Burden and he's going to be an even better player potentially at the next level, just in terms of the amount of different routes that he can run. I think he's going to have a more diverse skill set as time goes along here. So again, second round, Luther Burden, that's a pretty freaking good value, especially compared to, again, somebody like Dorial Green Beckham, who never even saw the field. Remember, once you get past the first round into the second, the longer it goes on, the more of a crapshoot this process becomes. And on the basketball side, it is tough to picture somebody who played against Missouri last season in the border war switching sides and playing for the Tigers in the future. But you know what? It could happen as soon as next season. So let's talk about if you would take Rylan Griffen on Dennis Gates' squad or not. Let's get there in just a second. But first, did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Holy cow, this is quite the revelation to me that you can turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included. So we're talking games like EA Sports College Football 25, Call of Duty Black Ops 6. I mean, really, this is endless entertainment, essentially. With 4K streaming, you've got Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, and more on top of an Xbox basically in the palm of your hands. I mean, if you're traveling someplace, maybe you're a grandparent, something like that, you don't want to make the full investment of a gaming console, this is a great option for you. So head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire Stick 4K second generation, Fire TV Stick 4K Max first and second generation, and Fire TV Cube third generation. So we are slowly but surely getting to the end of this transfer portal process. Though technically the football portal is still open until midnight tonight here, April 25th. But the basketball portal is closed. So what does that mean? Again, just to clarify, that means that those who have entered the transfer portal can still find new homes after this deadline here. The deadline is all about entering the portal and defecting from your team. So when it comes to the Dennis Gates and who is he going to nab to fill the last two spots on his roster, well, you got me. You really do. I'm not sure what Dennis Gates is looking at right now because there isn't a lot of obvious indications based on visitors or anything like that. I will say On3 has said that Missouri has contacted Rylan Griffen, formerly of Alabama his first two seasons, but then with Kansas and Bill Self this previous season. So the immediate question, I think, if you're a traditional Missouri fan like me, is can you really take a Kansas guy to play for Missouri? I got to say, I think there's going to be a pretty noticeable age gap in this particular question. I think if you're my age or older, certainly you're probably going, ooh, PU, no thank you, that type of deal. If you're a current Missouri student, for example, and the Kansas rivalry isn't as big of a deal to you as it is to people like me, you're probably going, what are you talking about? The transfer portal, who cares? It's all transient stuff anyway. And I can see the argument either way. I really can because, well, in other sports, Missouri and Kansas have had transfers already. It hasn't happened in men's basketball or football that I'm aware of, but in this new day and age, it does sort of seem inevitable whether we like it or not. My instinct is, you know what? Go away, quite frankly. If you played for Kansas, go away. That's my instinct. But I have to say here, it seems more likely that Rylan Griffen, who is in contact with his old Alabama squad, Nate Oates still down there, of course, seems more likely that he's going to go there instead. So are we just being used as a piece of leverage here and a negotiating chip? But regardless, are we sure Rylan Griffen is good? That would be my question, because on the show yesterday, I said, you know what, he's a guy, maybe it was a couple days ago, but regardless, I'd at least brought up Rylan Griffen as an example of somebody who is an interesting player who at least fit, I think, Gates' system and just fit Missouri's need, which I think they need at least one, if not two more shooters to fill out these spots here. At least one guy who can knock down a three-point shot, ideally two of them. But the question is, how good is Rylan Griffen? Well, last season against Missouri, by the way, he had all of 13 minutes. He had 3 points and 2 fouls. So not exactly a lot to write home about there. He never seemed to find his footing there with Bill Self and the Jayhawks. But also, there's a big difference between 39% three-point shooter Rylan Griffen, the guy who cashed in on said three-point shooting after his sophomore year to transfer to Kansas. Well, he then shot 33% with Kansas last year and just 30% his freshman year with Alabama. And quite honestly, when Griffen is not an elite three-point shooter, statistically there isn't a lot else there to write home about, especially when his free throw shooting dropped off pretty dramatically from 81% to 67.5% last year. That makes me think that, well, the down three-point shooting wasn't just a fluke. That was a matter of maybe a technique issue there, maybe a lack of confidence, or maybe the sophomore season was the statistical outlier there. Maybe that's the fluke, because for his career, while still solid, 35% overall, not exactly 40%. That's a massive difference there. So which is the real Rylan Griffen? To me, that is every bit, I would say, a more important question, quite honestly. Is this guy actually good? Does he fit what Missouri wants to do? Is he going to be a plus three-point shooter for the Tigers? Those are much more important questions to me than should we take a guy on the other side of the border war. Don't get me wrong, I like that question. It's a fun barroom question, and my instinct as a Jayhawk hater is to say, buzz off. But again, more importantly, I think Missouri and Dennis Gates, well, they need to figure out who exactly is the real Rylan Griffen. That's the real question to me. And you know what? Whenever Luther Burden gets picked, presumably today in the second round, well, here's what I don't want to hear from Luther Burden. I don't want to hear about all the teams that made a huge mistake and how he's writing down everybody's name at the receiver position that went before him. I'm frankly tired of that attitude in general among our sporting cats these days. This isn't a Burden-specific criticism. I'm just saying I hope he doesn't go in that direction tomorrow when he's finally drafted. I'd like to see some actual gratitude for a change out of a modern player instead. But you know what? The NBA playoffs is almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. And you know what? I know this is an NBA read. Forgive me, FanDuel, but I do think it's interesting here. I just talked about the first pick of the second round. Well, right now, Shedeur Sanders, a pretty overwhelming favorite to be that at minus 140. That makes a lot of sense. The Titans already have their quarterback. Certainly, they would listen to calls there for somebody who is interested in Sanders. But you know what? Luther Burden there, 22-1 to be that pick. A decent long shot there, but that does say that, well, Burden could be in for probably maybe a 5 to 10 pick wait, 5 to 15 kind of pick wait today if I had to guess. But regardless of what you're into, whether it's the NBA, the draft, don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. So again, if I were in Luther Burden's circle, when he gets drafted tomorrow, my advice would be just say, I'm grateful to be here, ready to put my head down, get to work, all that stuff. And what triggered this thought was actually a Missouri opponent from Texas A&M this past season, Shemar Stewart, who went 17th overall to the Cincinnati Bengals, and yet for some reason he thought that was obviously not high enough for him. Now, first impressions are always interesting. Travis Hunter, I almost said Travis Campbell, but Travis Hunter, obviously what an ebullient, likable personality he is. I think Will Campbell, the kind of guy you'd like to, have in your locker room, that type of deal. But then Shemar Stewart, I have to say I was less impressed by my first impression of his personality when he comes out there behind his sunglasses, basically scowling the entire time and saying 16 other teams messed up. Well, Shemar, let me give you a little dose of reality here. You were third team All-SEC. You had 4.5 sacks in your career. In 37 games, you had 4.5 sacks as an edge rusher. Now, listen, Daniel Jeremiah on the NFL Network had a good thing yesterday about why NFL teams, specifically at pass rusher, will take traits often over production. Basically, hey, in the college game, they're getting the ball out so quickly with RPOs. You see a lot more actual pocket quarterback play in the NFL. That's going to make it, that's going to affect your sack numbers, essentially. Hey, great, fine. That makes all the sense in the world to me. And by the way, when I watched Shemar Stewart last season scouting Texas A&M, watched him against Missouri, I was duly impressed. I thought he was a really good player. So frankly, I was surprised that he only had 4.5 sacks in his Texas A&M career. But my point here, and it's not really about Stewart specifically, it's just about the modern athlete who seems to want to take the Michael Jordan route of, when I'm in the Hall of Fame and I'm still throwing shade at my junior varsity coach or whatever the hell it is. Listen, Michael Jordan, arguably the greatest basketball player and athlete of all time, but that particular trait is not attractive. Not on Michael Jordan, not on Shemar Stewart, not on anybody, in my opinion. The ability to not let stuff go. Okay, great. It may have propelled Jordan to some athletic greatness that marginally, maybe he would have won 5 titles instead of 6 if he weren't just a complete jerk to everybody in his life. But Jordan famously, everybody he used to be friends with, whether it's Tiger Woods or Charles Barkley or Scottie Pippen, seems like they all kind of hate him now. I don't know. That's not the best way to go through your life, in my opinion. To me, a little bit of gratitude actually goes a long way. And when I see somebody like Travis Hunter, who could not be happier to have been drafted by a terrible franchise in the Jacksonville Jaguars, I didn't see him complaining for 1 second. He seemed happy and ready to get to work. Hey, Shemar Stewart, take some notes. I mean, Travis Hunter could have been like, hey, I'm the only two-way player in college basically ever, certainly in the last 25 years or so. And he could just be like, well, why didn't I go number 1? The Titans done messed up, this type of thing. I don't know. I just find the opposite attitude of that so much more refreshing because, listen, Shemar Stewart, the Bengals are a few good defenders away from being right in this thing next year. If you're one of them, you'll be praised as being a huge difference maker on a team that, who knows, could win a Super Bowl next season. It's the best life. It's the best night of your life, essentially. You just became a millionaire instantly. Act like it. So, Luther Burden, when you get picked, I understand if you're a little disappointed. I really get it, but don't show it. If you're taking notes in the back of your mind like Amon-Ra St. Brown, remembering every single receiver that went in front of you, I'm just saying if that is going to fuel you in the short term, fine, but keep it to yourself. And in the long term, man, at a certain point, you just got to let it go, or else you're going to be, jaundiced-eyed Michael Jordan. and his whiskey collection at a certain point. But regardless, hey, coming up pretty soon, I need to get Brian Smith back on this show to talk some recruiting. And in the meantime, check out his show, The Portal. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find The Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. So until next time, I am John Miller. This has been Locked On Mizzou.